Monday, October the 18th, the year of our Lord 2021. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. Unfortunately broadcasting once again out of the grotesque Capitol Hill. Joined today by somebody who has been AWOL on the show. Natalie Winters joins us for this episode, which I think I'm going to entitle something along the lines of, is Fauci fucked? Well, we'll find out, because we continue to get more and more emails and evidence of Anthony Fauci and his misdeeds over decades, quite frankly. But that's not all. There's plenty more to talk about from the scoops of Natalie Winters. I want to say a great big thank you to all of the new members who have been joining up in the last week or so. Make sure you head on over to fundrealnews.com. That is the only way the National Pulse survives. It's from the good actions of the good people of the Western world. Fundrealnews.com. And make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you are all interacting and sharing the content, stories, podcasts, middle of the night cheeky tweets and posts from me, and especially make sure that you are sharing them on Getter, gettr.com, the real home of free speech. Let's get right into it. Natalie, do we have you?
Yes, hi.
Wow, that's what you sound like. I'd forgotten.
I know, I was about to say thank you for having me, but then I realized this is our podcast. But I know I don't think I've been on the podcast since we changed the graphic to include me.
No, I thought it was either the graphic or you being on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the way to get out of it, just to be pictured on the cover art, and then I never have to come on. No, I'm so glad to be doing a podcast.
Well, the best thing about that is that you now have to take ownership of everything I say on the shows that you're not on, because your face is on.
Oh, no. We can go back to the old one.
Well, we're putting out more shows now that I've got my act into gear and brought my studio set up upstairs on Capitol Hill, and bought a portable kit. So we're going to have more shows than ever before, and you can choose to be a part of them if you want, Natalie. I don't mind either way. Where in the world are you right now?
I love podcasting. I know. I am in Chicago at school, just learning
just
so
in your
much.
Class right now?
I'm in class. I'm in my women and feminist politics class right now. It's great, learning all about
I'm getting
CRT,
a lawsuit
all that
is what you're
fun
saying.
stuff. Definitely, yeah. Something tells me they won't be bringing you in as a guest lecturer. But no, I'm in Chicago. I haven't been in Chicago for that long, but I guess this is my first podcast back in school.
How is Chicago?
Well, I think about 2 days ago, they had to hemorrhage about half of their kind of emergency response force due to the vaccine mandates. So it's been a little wild here, because I don't think there are a lot of cops or emergency responders, EMT, that kind of situation here. So that's been a little concerning. The mask mandates are really, really annoying. And frankly, it's, I don't really like to talk too much about my personal life. I enjoy talking more so about
you tell me about it all the time.
No, I just mean, I'm sure people aren't super interested in everything that's going on at school, but it is very interesting to, given the work that we do and the worldviews that we hold, to be going through college right now and seeing this. I've never liked the word indoctrination, but just seeing how they really force this certain worldview on kids, and how easy it is to pass courses, especially I'm a political science major, if you just say the magic words, systematic, problematic, systemic racism, oppression, all these magical words. As long as you say that, the teacher is like, wow, you did the reading, you know everything. So it really isn't even just the kind of just bias on campus, but it's really interesting to just see the dumbing down of academia. And frankly, I think that's reflected in what we see going on now at the upper echelons of American society. Like graduating from a top school doesn't really mean anything if you can write your thesis on, you know, what oppression means to me. And you can do it in poetry, and you probably don't even have to write it in English. So it's very interesting to watch kind of the world that we lament about so much unfold and unroll kind of up before me.
Yeah, well, I was on a train last night back down to DC from New York, and the train was full. Sitting across from me was probably one of the most annoying people I've ever had to sit near on a train. Person kept kicking me under the table, and she was just annoying her own daughter who was sitting next to her. But then sitting next to me, so I had to get that off my chest. Completely unrelated.
Yeah,
sitting next to me. Yeah, it was you. Sitting next to, and by the way, stop annoying your daughter. Sitting next to me was this very well put together, college-aged white girl. Very nice manicured nails, AirPods in, and she had this textbook out, and the whole textbook was institutional racism. And this thing was like 500 A4 pages thick, and she was going through, and you know, like girls do, they just highlight everything in a textbook. She was just going through, highlighting every single thing and making these little notes about like how bad it is to be white in the margin of this book, and making like, I was just glancing over at some of the chapter titles, you know, anti-capitalism stuff and all of that, and she's just lapping it up. And, you know, she's got her AirPods in, and I just thought to myself, this is just such a, oh, I don't even have a word for it. It's bullshit. It's just bullshit. And I just didn't even realize the extent to which this was pervasive, because, you know, I'm 35 years old. I haven't been, you know, near a college campus in a long time, Your Honor. But, you know, I didn't realize that this wasn't just something that, you know, the teachers were teaching or showing a few videos about. I didn't realize there were big, massive, professional, like in industrial scale textbooks that were being made. You know, when I was at college, none of that existed. Like, just none of it existed. And to the point where it did come up at all, it was in a seminar where some person with a Che Guevara t-shirt on would make mention of racism or whatever, and kind of everybody else would just laugh at them and mock their foreign accent. No, I'm kidding. But you know, it just wasn't. It wasn't a you know, institutional in and of itself. And I guess a lot of people my age plus don't quite realize that actually, whatever you're studying at university, it's a good chance that half of what you're studying is completely unrelated to the study topic, but actually related to cultural Marxism.
Totally. And it's very interesting, because I always think a good litmus test of what is kind of considered cool and acceptable on campus, I would say both words I would not describe myself as, at least with regard to Chicago, but it's the kind of questions that students feel comfortable asking professors. And I also think that kind of, at least in lecture, kind of reflects what they're absorbing from the reading, from the material. And without fail, any kind of discussion-based course that I'm in, the person who raises their hand 9 times out of 10, the question is something along the lines of, well, we know that capitalism is an exploitative system that, you know, relies on exploiting brown bodies who have forever been oppressed by whites. I mean, it's like a joke. It's like the SJW memes, but it's that in the flesh. And everybody asks questions like that. I'm surrounded by people who think like that. And it's just so funny, because coming from, you know, I guess I spent kind of a year and a half, 2 years out of college while still being a student. And it's just so weird to be back in an environment where that's the norm and that's how everyone thinks. And they don't even see, it's not even that they think that they are Marxist or that they think that they're culturally Marxist. They think that that's just how the world is. And I think, to me, that's where I feel helpless, because I'm like, you know, no. The reason why, for instance, in one class, they were lamenting that there like weren't enough women of color who were scholars in this like extremely nuanced form of, I don't even know what, I don't even remember the subject. They were like, and it's racist because they're celebrating that there are only female scholars, but they're all white. And like everyone in my group like just rolls their eyes and they look like so mad at just the world. And I was like, what the like it was just the most absurd thing that I've ever experienced. And it's really concerning too, because, you know, Chicago is a great school in the sense that, you know, these are kind of the next generation of leaders. These are the people who are going to be running the corporations and Wall Street. Again, we know that they don't really like the MAGA movement to begin with, any Fortune 500 company. But at least to me, the writing on the wall is there. This is kind of the next generation of people who will be just entering the workforce. And they've never even been exposed to anything outside of cultural Marxism to the point that they think that a Marxist worldview is, you know, it's just a worldview. That's just the way the world is. It's very weird. I feel like I don't watch a lot of movies, so I don't know what the proper film reference would be. But I always joke that I feel like an alien that's been like dispatched down to Earth to like infiltrate a college campus or something, because I'm just so at odds with so many of the kids here. So it's been very, very fun being here.
I think there might be an entire weekly show in this, you know, Dispatches from the Wasteland or something, where you tell us the crazy stuff that happened on campus this week, as long as it doesn't get you kicked out.
I know, and I'm trying to choose my words very carefully.
Yeah.
But no, people have to know, because, you know, this is in some ways whistleblowing. I don't want to say but people need to know what's going on.
It shouldn't even be considered that. Why should, yeah, exactly. Why shouldn't they know? Why shouldn't people know? I mean, you talk about people going into the workplace. My bigger concern is that they're not actually going to be going into the workplace. You know, there is this entitlement now in this generation, and COVID has only sped that whole thing up, that, hey, why do we actually even need jobs? Let's just jump to the, you know, the Andrew Yang, you know, logical eventuality of all of that stuff that he's been positing for so long, which is cradle to grave communism. And that's what we're seeing across the board right now. So let's get into a few of the stories that you've been covering, because I think when you take all of these things in the round, and you know, that is really what the National Pulse is, ladies and gentlemen. It is not designed to be a news site that, you know, if somebody dies, we go, oh, Colin Powell dies, and you put it on the front page or whatever. That's not what we do. We're not a newswire service. You got to look at it as
we make too many typos to do that.
Well, I don't know. Have you read Reuters recently? I think your copy might be better. And that's saying something. Yeah. So you know, you got to take all of these stories and all the themes and everything that you see on the Pulse in the round. You know, National Pulse readers, subscribers, listeners should know that this isn't like dipping into you know, Breitbart.com or something and just kind of picking and choosing what headlines you want to read. This is honestly, this is a holistic and immersive experience. Which is, by the way, going to be the new strapline under the National Pulse on the website. It's not real news and investigations anymore. It's a holistic, I don't even remember what I just said, an immersive experience. But it is, and philosophy is that, and political philosophy is that. You can't really do those things in half measures. And I realize that's not for everyone, and I realize it takes a lot more time than people have on their hands. But as I say, the government's going to just start paying you to stay at home anyway, so you will have a lot of time to consume this stuff. So, Natalie, let's talk about one of the big ones, which is you have continued, while everybody else seems to have given up, by the way, to obtain emails from Dr. Anthony Fauci, or rather Mr. Anthony Fauci, and his wife. I forget the name. Christine
Grady.
Mr. Christine Grady, yeah. And so let's talk about those. What have we learned from the things that you've dug up so far, and tease us a little bit with what else you're inquiring about through these Freedom of Information Act requests?
Sure. So we put up two stories that related to these FOIA requests that I had filed. I think it was probably a few months back. Frankly, I was surprised we ever heard back from them, let alone they actually forwarded us a lot of these emails. But very interestingly enough, the percentage of emails that they've redacted, as you could probably imagine, has been very, very high. You're talking like 60, 70, 80% per FOIA request. So that means we can't see. It's to kind of grade out text. But from what we can see, I think the emails that we got really kind of shed some insight into the mind more so of Anthony Fauci and, of course, his wife. So in particular, we had one email where you see Anthony Fauci getting an email from basically his kind of chief of staff, a guy named Greg Folkers. And Anthony Fauci feels compelled to forward this email to his wife, which is titled Fauci Gets His Own Action Figure. And it goes on, it's an article from The Hill, and it talks about how some toy company was creating a eerily lifelike doll of Anthony Fauci for children to play with, which at face value is very concerning. But if you set that aside for a second, he forwards it to his wife, and she responds, "It is endless, ... You've been immortalized," smiley face. And I think that, I don't know, I said that to you, and I said, these people are so weird. But I think this speaks to something that we've kind of been raising the red flags about with Anthony Fauci, which is this kind of new development of scientism, really Fauciism, where he is, the high priest. And I think that that's just a very odd response. I mean, I think it's weird to forward that to your wife to begin with. But within that FOIA request, there was an article documenting how a lot of people are dying in Norway from getting the COVID vaccine. And he just kind of sends the email to his wife, and she just simply responds, "Yikes," nothing else on the text or the email chain rather. And then lastly, the other email that we had uncovered, to me, this is the one that I was probably most excited about because it affirmed and confirmed reporting that we had done months back. People may recall we had an exclusive story talking about how the Galveston National Laboratory, which is basically a pet project of the NIAID, which is Fauci's NIH agency, and we were documenting how this lab was training a lot of the top researchers who are working at the Wuhan Institute of Virology for years. And what they were training them was actually how to work with, quote, the world's most dangerous pathogens, end quote. That was from a slideshow where they were pointing out that was made by the director of this lab, who's received a ton of money from Anthony Fauci, of how the Wuhan Institute of Virology was really a case study, but really a success story, and how they had trained researchers, particularly in working at that biosafety level 4 lab. So that was bad enough, right? We had already linked Fauci there by funding this lab to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, even to the BSL-4 facility. But then in this email, again, if Anthony Fauci wants to say, "Oh, I was busy, I didn't know this was happening, you can't expect me to know everything that's going on in my agency," you see that the director of this lab, the Galveston National Laboratory, James LeDuff, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, he emails him a long email, a couple paragraphs, talking about how they're actually hosting a delegation of people from the Wuhan Institute of Virology from their biosafety level 4 facility, how they're coming to this NIAID, again, taxpayer-funded lab, and they're basically going to swap secrets, and they're going to talk about how to best manage laboratories and work with, again, these very dangerous pathogens. And Fauci responds, "Oh, I can't make it, I'm busy." But no inkling of, are you sure that's a good idea? Are you sure we should be training a Chinese Communist Party and Chinese military-linked lab? He's totally okay with it. And again, I think for people who want to be ahead of the curve and understand not just kind of the broader narrative of the origins of COVID-19, but how deeply enmeshed the Chinese Communist Party is in all aspects of America, I think the story is a perfect example of that because we sourced it even without Fauci's emails. And then a few months later, it's confirmed internally. And, if you've been reading the National Pulse, you would have said, that's not a shocker. I've known that for a while. So that's just some of the stories that we've had up from just 2 of these FOIA requests. I filed a ton more. I'm happy to be a thorn in the side of the NIH FOIA office. But I guess I have to be kind of nice or else they won't turn over any of the documents.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And, I think the more detailed that these FOIA requests are, the more that they have to kind of comply because, then it becomes just very obvious what they're doing. But tell us a little bit about, the rate of redaction in the responses that you're getting. Because for every one email we put up, I would say there are about 10 to 15, maybe that's, I don't know if there's too much or too little, actually. But it feels like that's kind of right to me.
I calculated the number somewhere.
Okay.
I have to find it.
Okay. Well,
but no, it's very interesting. No. Oh, they've hidden over half. And for one FOIA request that I had submitted with terms Wuhan, and I like Wuhan Institute of Virology, any kind of iteration of that, they found 337 pages, and 52% of them were withheld from the National Pulse, which I also think is very interesting. And I think, again, avid readers of the National Pulse, all these narratives I think kind of converge. But you remember Anthony Fauci when the first kind of real headline hitting batch of emails of his hit. This was a few months back. He was on, forget what program it was. I think it was maybe NBC. And when they were kind of pressing him, as much as the mainstream media would press Fauci on anything, pressing on the emails, he kind of jokes and says, "Oh, it's not a smoking gun. I don't even have any control over what's going on. I don't even know what they release." But then there was a separate lawsuit that actually Judicial Watch had filed. And in that lawsuit, they were saying, "Oh, well, the reason why it takes time and why we can't grant you expedited processing is because Anthony Fauci has to personally review every single email that we release." So there's some kind of incongruence there, I think, between the storyline of how they release these emails and how they decide what gets released. In particular, there was one email, I think I had sent it to you, where they're talking about Trump. They're talking about, again, one of these very narcissistic emails talking about how, like, Fauci's more popular than Trump. No one likes Trump. Everyone loves Fauci. I think the polls would disagree. But they being the NIH Office of FOIA Affairs, they totally redact the email to the point where you can really only see, like, the headline and the article that they send. And I think that they know, because I'm sure what's being said in there is not the kindest thing to President Trump. But yeah, it's very interesting to read all their emails and just to see kind of behind the scenes.
Well, I think that's one of the more interesting parts of all of this that we are going to find out at the end of it, which is what have they been saying and why are they blacking it out when they send those emails back to us in those FOIA requests? And it's not like those things can stay a secret forever. So, the question I posed at the beginning of the podcast is Fauci fucked. I mean, what say you?
Well, just one last thing on the emails, because to me, I've never even understood why they redact anything to begin with. As someone who has watched, I won't even admit the number of hours that I've spent watching Anthony Fauci give talks, but amidst the debate about the gain of function research, one of the kind of general refrains from him, and frankly anyone in the NIH kind of area, was that the government, specifically Anthony Fauci's office, doesn't fund any type of classified or confidential research, either in actually funding it, the outcomes, the products, what they're dealing with. There should be no secrets because they say, the American people's tax dollars. They should be able to see what's going on. Right. So to me, that's the kind of question. So then what are you redacting? It's purely political, I think. But your question, I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth. I'm not someone who likes false hope. I'm not someone who's going to say, 90 times, Fauci's going to be in jail tomorrow, because I don't think that's the case. Right. But I think Fauci, yeah, a week maybe. No. I think, being a realist, I do think that Anthony Fauci will suffer a similar fate to that of Peter Daszak, and that the legacy and the reputation of these people will be severely tarnished, at least by, your average American person. Right, you remember, just for the working class, I think most people dislike Fauci, but I think within those establishment circles, which I think are what these kind of narcissist types care more about, I don't think his reputation will ever be assaulted. I think they'll always think that, he was always under unfair assault and attack from, the crazy people on the right wing. But I don't know, because Peter Daszak, for instance, the Lancet Journal removed him, which is obviously an establishment body. But on the other hand, EcoHealth Alliance has also been appointed, which is Peter Daszak's group, has also been appointed to a lot of kind of post COVID-19 pandemic advisory boards. So it's kind of this fine line between, can you say these people are, for lack of a better word, canceled? But then also they're still kind of on the scene. But I don't know. I think it's too soon to tell.
Well, it does seem like some wheels are turning, and I'm the same as you. I don't like false hope. I don't like false narratives. But I look at Francis Collins, right? And I understand that he's going to go and sit in some cushy job or whatever, but I do think it signals to the world that this person who has presided for so very long over this institution for so very long, and I don't mean just the NIH, I mean the institution of the pharmaceutical. Everybody always told me at the beginning of the pandemic, don't touch Francis Collins. Nobody can touch Francis Collins. He'll be there longer than you'll be alive, Raheem, and he's not. And I think that they are now beginning to fear that the backlash, or the lashback, as you would say, of the of the.
It's a great word.
Yeah, it's a great new word. Of everything that is coming down, and I just wish, look, we could expedite the process of all of this if every reporter on the political beat in Washington DC actually bothered to do what you do, which is ask those questions and go through the visitor logs and figure out exactly what's going on. For a fact, I mean, you and I know for a fact that in about 6 to 8 months' time, somebody over at Politico, or what's that new one, Punchbowl or something, will report, Fauci was funding Wuhan studies after all. We just found this out, and they didn't just find it out, because I know they all read us. I get feedback from all of these people, but it just has to work in the time frames that frankly, whatever Big Pharma wants, and whatever the people who sponsor those news outlets, which is predominantly nowadays Google, Microsoft, Facebook. Am I missing any others who sponsor Axios and all those guys? I think those are the big ones at the moment. So, the world and the news kind of works to their timetables, but hey, we'll always be there first, and that applies to a lot of different things as well. I think there is a lot of cause to go back and go through and actually start resharing some of our older stories, Natalie, because the things that are now known as oh yeah, obviously, are the things that we were saying and that we've been. I mean, I say cancelled. I am uncancelable. I feel that. What is this now? I've got another phone call coming. I won't take it, but I've got another phone call coming in.
You should have him in the podcast.
It's Haaland. It's Haaland. So I don't know. I won't put him live. But yeah, I just think now is the time to start going back through it. And look, I won't say we're cancelable, because I just don't care enough about the approval and approbation of these people to have this situation whereby they can actually, really cause me any existential harm. But we lost our biggest advertising partner about a month ago. That cost us something like $40,000 on the year. These things really, they do try and hurt you. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to help us to bridge that gap, fundrealnews.com is the website, and it gets us away from having to rely on external people to monetize the site. But yeah, I think time to go back and go through and sort of maybe even do, that roundup you did the other day? I think it was the Francis Collins one, actually.
Yeah,
doing that just over and over and over, as Steve used to teach me over at Breitbart. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Those are the ways that you get that you win the narrative. So what else should we be looking at? What are the other stories that you've had up lately?
Something that I found very interesting, again, kind of tracing the origins of COVID-19, that never-ending quest has kind of reached a new episode in this saga. The World Health Organization, which I'm sure anyone listening
well, this is a
to
big
this
one.
podcast is a huge fan of. No, is not a big fan of at all.
Maybe we need to
But
set
they
up a
love,
website, fundrealscience.com.
maybe I should just major in biology and become a scientist. So I can't even say that with a straight face. I am not good at science, and I'll leave it at that. Although it's very funny. I was walking around I had a lab today,
Yeah.
and I was walking around the facilities, and they had a poster, and it had to do with this kind of dual use research of concern, gain of function research, and it was literally like, make sure you're talking to your like NIH supervisor if you think your research may fall under this kind of area, this flag or whatever. And I was like, oh, I know that. I know what's happening. That's about where my knowledge stops. But what we do know about science is that it is very, very heavily invested in and influenced by the Chinese Communist Party and their pals in the establishment over here in the United States. But really, I guess, all the way to the global bodies like the World Health Organization. And I think perfectly on display, they released their second string, I guess, of COVID origins investigators. People may remember this was the first group was how Peter Daszak really became famous. This is, of course, Peter Daszak of the EcoHealth Alliance and the Fauci-funded researcher collabing with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But a lot of these scientists that we dug into who had very extensive ties to the Chinese Communist Party and even the Wuhan Institute of Virology that they didn't disclose at all, and they pretended to be neutral arbiters of the origins of COVID-19. So, of course, no surprise when the report that they released said, oh, the virus didn't leak from a lab or it wasn't released from a lab. People who say that are crazy. So there was enough scrutiny over that they had to launch a new investigation. But again, I'm not holding my breath, just like when the Biden regime says they're going to get tough on China. Kind of hard to do that when your whole entire regime is staffed with people who've been on the CCP dole for decades. And kind of very similar issues here. Of the 26-person team that they announced, 6 of them are holdovers from from last year's effort. One of them who kind of notoriously bragged or just was totally okay with the fact that the investigation, I'm using air quotes, hand quotes, wasn't even an actual audit into the lab. They just said hi to the Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers and asked them how they were doing, and that was it. And she was like, that's what we did. It was totally fine. So you got that lady on there. Sounds like someone who will definitely hold them to task. But very interestingly enough, again, for people who've been reading the National Pulse, you kind of start to see all these narratives converging, which I think is just a byproduct of the fact that we tell you the truth. So it's like, oh, that's why the reality that we tell on the National Pulse, it manifests in front of you because it is, as you say, people funded and it's truth. There's no agenda behind it. But very, very interestingly, an individual who signed on to that notorious Lancet statement, which really kind of influenced very heavily the mainstream media and even kind of the scientific community's approach to the origins of COVID-19, whereby they said COVID-19 developed naturally, and anyone who says otherwise is, fueled by racism or whatever word of the day they chose. And an individual who actually signed that letter, which later had to basically be redacted or clarified, I guess. He's also on this World Health Organization team, which, again, is not just a conflict of interest because it's evident where his allegiance lies when it comes to the hunt of origins of COVID-19, but I also just think it kind of tells you on a moral level what kind of people you're dealing with, people who will, just lie to your face for an advantage to be part of a Lancet statement, right? When Anthony Fauci lies to us about how you don't need to wear masks, now you need to wear masks. I think it just kind of tells you what type of people they are. But if you don't take issues with the morals there, we also have I would say more kind of hardcore boots on the ground compromise in the form of, okay, I'm going to attempt to say the name and I'm probably going to laugh. You might laugh, but I don't even know if I can pronounce this. It's Super Porn Watchera plus a D. That's the name.
Wait. Okay, hold on. Slowly. This is a person's name. And what is
oh,
it?
no. I don't even know why I did this to myself.
You trapped yourself.
I know. Okay, the name is...
This is a real person's name.
Yes.
Okay, you do it, and I'll try and do it too. This is a new person on the WHO
People
team.
know I'm really bad at pronouncing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Super porn, Wachra Puesadi.
Okay, I'm gonna have a try now as well. Okay, super porn, Wachara Plusadi. Okay, I don't know why we're being so immature about this, but
so now
you
that
gotta take the joy where you can, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this shows you how dark it is. But that's like the only. Anyways, she's from Thailand. Fun fact. But even though she's from Thailand, I think she's a good friend of Peter Daszak. And I say that because she was actually listed as one of these kind of co-investigators, co-researchers on a 2020 grant filed by EcoHealth Alliance. This kind of, for this grant was the notorious one that people may have seen. It was making the rounds, not just on social media, but also in news outlets.
It was on the side of trucks in DC, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they talk about wanting to construct, quote, chimeric SARS-like bat coronaviruses. It was unearthed, I believe, originally by Drastic, that grant. And this lady, Superporn, is listed on there as one of the researchers. So again, it just kind of goes back to the issue of, why are you appointing the people who helped create this problem in the first place to be the people who unravel it? And frankly, I think we did a podcast about this a little bit ago. But I think that that's the issue that we see going on now, at least in the Biden regime. I think especially with this financial stuff, I'm more of a China hand, I guess I would say, in the sense that I focus on the world, the perspective of what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. But,
Sure.
The people, at least in the Biden regime, that are being tasked with really trying to salvage and kind of rectify the situation with the Chinese Communist Party are the people who created the situation in the first place, either explicitly because they've been in government before, or they were the type of, let's call them what they are, treasonous, traitorous Americans who were taking money in various forms from Chinese government entities to kind of push the pro-Beijing line. And I think that's exactly what you see going on, and that's the issue. That's the issue with society. No, but it really is in every aspect, from the World Health Organization's COVID investigations team all the way to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The people who are not just trying to solve these problems, these alleged problems, but who are trying to tell us how to live our lives are the people who created these problems in the first place. And unlike any other sane world, they'd be on trial and sitting in jail. But instead, they're sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and up at the World Health Organization, the UN, and denigrating us, forcing us telling us what to do with our bodies. And it's maddening, I think.
Well, it's maddening, but I think it's far more than that. I mean, you look at everything you mentioned at the beginning about the police in Chicago. We're seeing the same thing in San Francisco at the moment as well. I mean, this is the Great Reset, right? This is designed to put people out of work. This is designed to change the way the economy works. It's designed to, let what's her name, the little climate girl,
Lori Lightfoot?
No.
Oh.
Good one.
Okay. I know. People who listen to the show know that a common refrain of Raheem's is, Natalie, stop doing stuff on your computer and listen to me. But now that we're not in the same room, I can be on my laptop, so I was kind of spacing out, and I just heard little girl, and I thought you were talking about Lori Lightfoot.
No, that's a little frog. The Greta Thunberg, right? She's out there and singing "Never Gonna Give You Up" on stage and dancing around. Doesn't really look to me like somebody who's deeply concerned that the Earth is going to end in 7 years, but but this is what this is all designed to do. And by the way, I'm the exact same way. I was zoning out myself. I was like going through a couple of emails and just realized oh wait, we're still recording.
We just record a podcast and it's just silent.
Just
like
silence.
Every 15 minutes, one of us says oh, are you good?
Are you good?
Cool.
Well, but I want people to understand why that is and why we do that. I mean,
Because we're ADHD.
well, totally. I mean, I cannot do one thing at a time. I cannot just focus on one thing at a
watch
time.
TV. I can't watch movies.
Right.
I can't watch anything that's not on 2 times speed. It's so bad. But it's okay because we have to take down the CCP. But yeah, it's a problem.
I was this morning. I just I bolted out of bed. I went for a run, but I was trying to text people while I was running, and just a total. I was at the gym listening to a podcast and then listening to an audiobook, and it's just a total overload of information. And then we got to sort through it and then present it to the rest of the world as if we're not weirdos. So that's the hardest part.
We're definitely weirdos. So I agree with everything you said, except that.
So plus ça change, plus qu'à la même chose, or whatever the French say, the more things change, the more they stay the same for the WHO's COVID Origins Committee. In your mind, why are they even bothering to do this at this point? Do you think anybody out there is going to even take, apart from the people that, apart from the Jim Sciutos of the world, is there anybody out there who is going to take what the WHO say about this seriously anymore?
I'm going to steal a word that I've heard a lot in class lately, and I'm going to say it is performative activism. That's one of the SJW left's favorite things right?
I like that. What is that?
So performative activism in their minds is when, I think that when you're talking about like the allies, so these are like the white people who can't actually understand the struggles that non-white people are going through because, of course, their activism, right? When they post pictures of the BLM logo or when they say Black Lives Matter, it's not because they actually feel it. It's just because they want the whole world to see them doing it. They want to be accepted, which probably. But, you can't do that anymore. You have to devote your whole life, your savings, and your firstborn child to the Black Lives Matter movement, or else it's just performative activism. But I think that that's what the WHO is doing, in the sense that they know their, in air quotes again, reputation, not that there was a strong one to begin with, was so tarnished from that first round. And I think it was a very easy kind of accusation to make against the body that, oh, you had so many compromised people on the team and their conclusions were so bad that you need to do a round 2. So they're like, okay, we'll do a round 2. We'll waste, thanks to Joe Biden, they can waste our taxpayer dollars doing it again.
Right.
But yeah, I think they're just doing it also too, and this is something that I would frankly love to do a longer podcast on, but there's kind of a weird development, I think at least, in establishment circles of we're not actually saying get tough on the Chinese Communist Party, but we're going to pretend we are. We're going to pretend that we're in a battle of, democracy versus authoritarianism, and we need to take on China, even though secretly they're investing, millions and millions of dollars in their companies every single day. But I think, again, that is a perfect example of performative activism, frankly, where I think that the elites in these circles, they don't want the jig to be up, in the sense that they want everyone to think, oh, no, we're very anti-CCP, we're very anti-China, but they're going about doing it in a very, very establishment way. So instead of saying, hey, you know what, we're going to take your stock off of our, stock market exchange, we're going to ban any foreign direct investment from China into the United States. Oh, you want a visa into the U.S. and you're a CCP member? Sorry, no thank you. Until you turn over all the virus samples and data that you've deleted and actually open up the lab. They'll never do that. So again, it's this performative activism. Oh, we're going to do an investigation into the origins of COVID-19, and we're going to use the utterly compromised, who's who of CCP sellouts, no pun intended, the WHO, to do so. So that's my take on it.
Well, this is what I tweeted this morning. Bradley Thayer had an article up at the Epoch Times saying the US should not assume it has the luxury of time in its confrontation with China. And I said, look, I agree with the premise, but the problem is it presumes that American leadership and the American political establishment even wants to win in this confrontation with China, and I just don't think they do. I just think it's got to the point now where they have realized. I mean, you look at what we've heard in the last week about these supersonic ICBMs or whatever it is. It's now you're starting on the back foot. If you even try to see down the threat of the Chinese Communist Party, you have to realize you are not in front. They are not about to overtake you. They have overtaken you. They have out-muscled you. They have out-thought you. They have out-strategized you. They have out-propagandized you. And you are now, I wouldn't say you're even on the back foot. You're kind of still, asleep in bed while the Chinese Communist Party is its running shoes on is halfway down the National Mall in more ways than one.
I totally agree. And I think that there's like a perfect example, a story we put up that confirms that narrative. Again, I think it's just because the narratives that we help kind of footnote are just that. We're footnoting them and not forging them out of, fake data, fake news, fake agendas. But, as Joe Biden is canceling American Keystone pipelines and really just, I guess, canceling American energy independence, I'm sure people have been to the gas stations and seen. I don't have my driver's license. I don't know how to drive, so I haven't been to the gas station really ever, I guess. But if I were, I'm sure I would be seeing very high price points.
Wait, you go to the gas station. We went to the gas station in Sioux Falls.
We did?
Well, we walked, yeah. We wanted to get some water.
Oh, yeah! And he didn't even bring his credit card, so I had to pay.
Yeah, that's also true. Thank you for my water.
You are very welcome. But, so, when Raheem and I went to that gas station, it was obviously very highly priced. Because we have no gas.
Because we definitely looked. Yeah, we looked. We checked out the prices.
No, we were actually just pumping gas without a car.
That's one of the services you get when you join up at fundrealnews.com is we will pump gas for you. We won't pay for the gas for you.
We'll pump it. I would love to do that. I would love to learn how to pump gas. But
stop. Wait. Stop,
I don't know.
Stop.
I don't know how to do anything.
Stop. Jack of all trades, master of none, but the complete opposite. I
have actually no real life experience.
or skills, or But here's the best thing about what you just said, and everybody's laughing at this, right? There's not a single person listening to this right now that is not laughing at that. You said, I would love to learn how to pump gas. Could you learn how to pump gas? I mean, you literally just put a nozzle in the hole and pull the trigger. It's not, there's no learning curve to it. It's like, oh yeah, you gotta twist it and shake it at the same time. Really get that gas real good in there,
Okay, I will rephrase.
I would love to pump gas. I think, Natalie, I think that's your cue to exit.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Natalie Winters for joining us today, walking us through some of those very important stories and giving me a good old giggle, which is desperately needed in these times. We should do a podcast on that as well. The importance of close friends and neighborliness at the moment. Very, very important to find people you trust. And I'm off to do a phone call with one of our members. If you go to fundrealnews.com, you can find out the different membership packages. Some of them get you a private one-on-one phone call with me. They can go anywhere from 20 minutes, depending on what people have to say, or an hour sometimes. I've spent longer on the phone with people. I love those conversations. Keeps me in touch with reality, because as you can tell, there's not much reality here in Washington, D.C. The other place I'm spending most of my time at the moment is New York. Not much reality there either. And then, Natalie thinks she has to learn how to pump gas, so not a lot of reality in my life right now. So you guys are keeping me sane. Head on over to fundrealnews.com. And I don't just mean that as a thing that I just say on the podcast. Like, we really need you. Like, we really do. And even if you can just give $5 a month, believe me, my biggest concern every day is that at some point we just are not able to exist anymore because it's not financially feasible. So if you can, or tell a friend or a colleague or a family member, or if you're already a member, Might really want to go up or a notch or two. Anyway, we'll leave it there. I'll see you again maybe tomorrow for another episode of the National Pulse.